Sarel,
Yeah.
would you marry me?
No.
Okay. So you didn't actually let me finish.
Oh.
What I was going to say was,
Okay.
would you marry me if I was a Hollywood movie star who had to hide my sexuality for fear of losing my job?
Oh. Love the backstory, but again, no.
No, okay. No. So you know that whole like I am an ally type thing you do?
That's not an ally thing to do?
No.
Oh. I think it's more you, though.
Oh, me. It's not gays en masse. You could find plenty of gays you would marry and do that and be Valentina Talk.
Absolutely. It's just you specifically.
Okay.
Well, listen, it's not the 1920s, okay?
No.
It's not. We are, in the 21st century now. We are in the 21st, right?
We are.
Far as I know, you haven't made it onto the silver screen and all of that jazz.
No, but we will be going back to the golden age of Hollywood. The old silver screen.
The old silver screen.
And back again to find out how fame interacts with LGBTQ plus relationships and look at the love lives of loads of celebs.
Iconic.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Sarel.
And I'm Jack Remmington, and this is Famously in Love, the podcast where we put the Brit in celebrity, yay! Giving you our cultural analysis of the lives of the rich and famous.
That's right. This is the show where we dive deep into romance, affairs and passions, and we look at how the media and Hollywood has contributed to their complexities.
From BBC Sounds, this is Famously in Love.
So, Jack, what's on today's agenda? A history lesson?
It actually is, but it's a very important one.
Okay.
This week we're going to get into the thorny and nuanced world of LGBTQIA plus celebrity love stories.
Very important.
Very important.
Very important.
There's also a lot to cover here. Far too much for just one episode, but I think we do need to lay out some context and discuss how fame interacts with non-straight relationships.
And obviously we've discussed a few, famous gay people and queer people within the industry as part of the podcast so far. But I've noticed that when it comes to famous relationships, we're often hearing about a lot of hetero straight relationships. We don't have enough queer stories, but I think there's a bit of caution when it comes to us and how we talk about them on the pod, because you want to be doing the stories justice.
Exactly. And I think that's what we're getting to the essence of today, is looking into why that is, why there are fewer stories told about queer pairings and why we don't talk about those stories in the same ways we do with straight ones. So I think it's a good place to start with the interesting history around Hollywood and gay relationships that actually says a lot about the current day and has kind of set why we are where we are now, in my opinion. And that it begins with lavender marriages in the golden age of Hollywood.
So I actually didn't know what a lavender marriage was until I did, my little researchy-worchy.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know what a lavender marriage is, it's kind of like a beard.
Yeah, it's basically a marriage of convenience.
A marriage of convenience where either one person in the marriage is queer or both parties are queer, and they have done it so that they can look like they're in a straight relationship.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be a queer relationship like between two women, for instance, because that doesn't have the same. Yeah, the whole point is that it looks like
a straight
relationship, which benefits everyone. And I think we'll get into some backstory and it'll show why that was so important at the time. So, obviously, being a member of the communitoires hasn't been without its challenges. So for the purposes of us and our listeners, I think it's quite important that I run through a few key dates and facts that I often find people don't know, particularly the ones that are more recent and I guess shocking, that will then allow us to understand the necessity of things like why lavender marriages for survival were important in the public eye back in the golden era of Hollywood in like the early 1900s. So in the UK, sexual acts between men were criminalised between the mid-1500s right up to 1967.
Insane.
So to put that into context, when the Beatles were at the height of their career and Yellow Submarine was number one in 1966, it was illegal to be gay in England. Like that's, sometimes I think it's easy to just look at numbers and be like, oh wow, this many billion things, 19 da-da-da.
Yeah.
The Beatles were at the height of their career.
Yes.
And it was illegal to be gay. Not just like public opinion didn't like it, it was illegal.
As in jail time.
As in jail time. Then the 1969 Stonewall riots happened in New York, which are somewhat credited with starting what we now know of Pride in the Western world, that then catalysed the UK gay rights movement kind of as an equal response. But only in 1990, so 4 years before I was born, did the World Health Organization no longer categorise homosexuality as a mental disorder.
I was shocked.
A mental disorder. 1990. This is like who we look to.
We look to them for like responses on like,
malaria.
Exactly.
And like all these big world applications.
When COVID was around, they were the people we were looking to steer us in the right direction. They only, in 1990, said, oh, actually...
By the way, it's not a mental health disorder.
How crazy.
Then, 2004, we have civil partnerships for same-sex couples in England.
Yeah.
And marriage in 2030.
Which also I find mad.
It's so weird because that was my first year of uni. So gays couldn't marry until I was doing my degree.
So what... I'm maybe...
Not to make everything about me, but it's hard to not like relate it to like...
Because it's all about me.
4 years before I was born. Oh, great, it's not a mental disorder anymore.
Yes.
I was at university...
When... Yeah,
for me, I think the most important thing that I want to mention, which I think a lot of people don't know about, is Section 28, because I think it's perhaps the most important policy that's had long-lasting effects on queer people in the UK. So it was introduced by Margaret Thatcher's Conservative government in 1988 and very broadly prohibited the, in quote, promotion of homosexuality, which in reality meant it became illegal to discuss anything queer.
Yeah.
And on the ground, like the obvious, tangible example of that is when homophobic bullying would happen in schools, it couldn't even be acknowledged by teachers to then be called out, never mind them not being allowed to teach about it or acknowledge anything beyond straight norms because it was literally illegal to do so.
It was also illegal to just like talk about your own experience. Just to...
Like if you as a queer child went to talk to a teacher who... well, whether they were gay or not, they just couldn't any way be allowed to relate for fear of getting in serious trouble. And that was in effect until 2003. So A, I was 9, B, Crazy in Love by Beyonce came out.
For goodness sake, Jack.
I'm sorry, but like, that's important.
We just have to solidify those dates. Okay.
And this was also like, this wasn't a policy that was hated. I mean, obviously it was by a lot of people, but it was supported. It was supported by a lot of religious groups. It was supported by the Salvation Army. It just, I could go on forever. But basically, this circles back to say, with the lavender marriages thing, that it's very easy, I think, to think that nowadays, oh my God, it's so much better for gay people. It's okay, we've got gay marriage, you know? And like, A, we have all our issues nowadays, but B, it really wasn't that way 100 years ago.
No.
So the necessity of lavender marriages was vital because, well, firstly, I love the fact that it's lavender marriage because lavender is basically associated with gays and that is such a slay colour to be associated with gays. But also what I didn't really realise was that Hollywood studios would pressure single stars to marry to make sure they look like model Americans, hence why they needed... because you could just be like, well, if you're gay, then why not just like stay single and not say you were gay if you needed to not come out? But the point was they needed to be these model, like the American dream, the goal of what it was.
I didn't realise that they'd put morality clauses in their contracts.
Which... obviously in contracts still nowadays, to an extent you have to do, you know, if you bring a brand into disrepute, but the fact that the biggest scandal of disrepute would be being gay.
The fact that we are linking immorality with homosexuality is insane.
Yeah. It's just so rubbish that it impacts on career. And I think the sad thing is that it does still happen now.
Yeah.
So like my king, Shawn Mendes, as we know, I'm obsessed with him, always has people speculating on his sexuality. And personally, I couldn't care less whether he is queer or not. It's not about that.
At all.
It's the fact that the general consensus is if he is queer, he's having to keep it private because of concerns for his career, because he has so many young female fans.
Yeah.
That's the sad thing.
Yeah.
It's not about what his sexuality is or when he chooses to disclose it. It's the fact that the likelihood is if he were to be queer, his active choice, if he is queer, to not disclose it is because of career worries.
Yeah.
So I did X Factor in 2017. I have a friend who was on it the year after me in a boy band, and 3 out of the 5 of them have since come out as gay, and they were actively told by someone on the team not to say that they were gay, any of them, because of that model of like needing to be fanciable by teenage girls.
Wow.
And you kind of think that like people behind the scenes now, that was 6 years ago, wouldn't be so brazen as to overtly say things like that. You get it in like the 40s or the 60s, you know what I mean? But that's now.
And I think it's also quite interesting because they're like, you know, we want teenage girls to fancy you, but I'm sorry, nobody loves a gay more than a teenage girl.
True.
Like, come on.
True. But I guess it's certain models, it's certain types. Like, you're right, but I think so much of stand-up often, is based on people fancying you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how attainable you are. Like, to me, whether Michael B. Jordan's gay or straight, I'm not going to be able to get with Michael B. Jordan, but it's this thing in people's head of, oh, well, they're totally unobtainable now if they're not the same, if their sexuality doesn't map well with mine.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie to you, I fancy some gay man.
Oh, absolutely.
So to me, I don't know, it doesn't compute, and obviously brands or whoever else needs to get on board with the times. But there are some gay men that I'm like, I would devour you.
Correct.
I would eat you alive.
Yeah.
My little snack. Hello.
That was too good.
Oh, too good. Give me another. Second,
little
please.
sweetness to it.
My little cherry pie.
So it brings us on to, which is such a constant back and forth conversation. I see it all the time on Twitter. Do celebs owe it to the public to come out?
Okay.
We can kind of break this down into separate parts. Firstly, there is the public entitlement around forced outings.
Yes.
So George Michael is one of the biggest examples that comes to mind. He was arrested in 1998 for engaging in a, quote, lewd act in a public bathroom in California. He handled it, in my opinion, literally better than anyone has ever handled it in the history of the world. He's been open about his sexuality since.
Yeah.
He made so much of his artistry about how proud he was
to be out.
He mocked the arrest in his single Outside. Even the lyrics of Outside is about what happened in that bathroom in California, because it's like, let's go outside in the sunshine. I know you want to, but you can't say yes. Like, it's this like iconic. The positive is that he spoke, and his artistry was so much about his queerness after coming out. But the negative is that outing wasn't of his own volition.
It wasn't a choice of his.
No.
And I'm not queer, I'm not part of the LGBTQ plus community, but I have, friends, family members who I don't think anyone is owed, like, if you are gay, you do not owe me a come out moment.
No.
I believe in just existing. I think the day we stop, like, they've come out and it's either claps or boos
100%
is the day we've won, because coming out, you're just living. There's no straight person who's ever like, I'm coming out as straight today, guys.
This was always my thing when I was younger, was like, I knew that my parents were accepting of me.
Yeah.
But I'd never said anything.
Yeah.
And so my dream situation was just like, yeah, I'm not going to come out. I'll just, whenever I have a boyfriend, I'll just bring him home.
Yeah.
The issue was, I never got a boyfriend. Yeah. So I had to take matters into my own hands. The problem with not coming out, do you know what I mean? Is like, you have to have someone want you to be your boyfriend. No one was willing, unfortunately. So my dissertation was on like the queer community and how systems of oppression within hierarchy are still upheld.
I don't mean to laugh.
I know.
Yeah, sorry, no, dissertation, yes.
So
systems of oppression.
I was then explaining that to my parents when my dad was asking me about it.
Yeah.
And he was like, I said, I'm making sure that I interview as many people as possible with differing identities. And I was explaining to him what like cis and trans was, or like able-bodied, disabled, like all these different terms.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, cool. So like, how do you identify? And I said, like, cis, gay, able-bodied white man. And then I was like, I walked out the room and I was like, oh my God, I've just come out to my dad. And I'd always planned to come out to my mum first. So I was like, Mum, come to our room, I need to talk to you right now. And then within 10 seconds of telling her, I was talking to her about like feminism and the oppression of trans people and blah, blah, blah. It became like this. But that was not meant to be my route. It was meant to be that I'd just be like, oh, my boyfriend's coming over.
We never
but
got
said boyfriend never existed for years.
Never manifested.
Alas. So, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I don't think people should have to come out. And I think time and time again, these like forced coming outs is shit. Will Young was forced to come out in 2002 because tabloids warned him. Barbara Walters, who we love, in 2000 was interviewing Ricky Martin, and there were rumours around it, and he said, just say, yes, I am gay, or no, I'm not.
Yeah.
And he left saying how uncomfortable he felt about it, and then 10 years later, she publicly said she really regretted that line of questioning.
Took you 10 years, Barbs.
But I'm not going to say in her defence, that was 25 years ago. Things have changed a lot. Forget about sexuality for a second.
Yeah.
America's Next Top Model.
Yeah.
They were blacking up white girls so that they could see what it felt to be African for a day.
Yes.
Like, that's where we were at, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
things have changed.
Drastically.
Can you imagine that happening now? Things have changed so much.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think also the thing you're saying about not having to come out then leads us nicely onto queerbaiting and how people benefit off, the idea of appropriating queerness. Queerbaiting as a definition, let's just get into that first, typically refers to a marketing tactic where media uses queer imagery, lyrics, plots and conversation to draw in an LGBTQ plus audience without the intention to deliver accurate LGBTQ plus representation.
Okay.
But I personally think the idea of an individual queerbaiting is unhelpful, as in the notion of it, not the actual act, because it's forcing the notion that we're being like, oh, so I'm saying this person's straight and then they're doing X, Y, Z things. Like Harry Styles gets a lot of flack for it.
Yeah, because I think then it boils down to like, what are gay things?
Right, exactly. And so like, I would rather Harry Styles blur the lines of gender norms in fashion than dress stereotypically as a man should and reinforce gender norms within fashion. I can at the same time understand and accept that it's easier for him to do that in his position as a white man, regardless of his sexuality, than it is for working class black and brown people who are queer. I totally accept that. But I'd still rather him help us all blur the lines of gendered clothes and gender norms.
I agree. I think when an institution does it, there's problems because what you're doing is you're getting a crowd who are, queer, gay, whatever. Right. You're getting them in, but you're actually then not
daring to. Yeah, exactly.
You're not supporting what it is you're trying to pull them in with.
Correct.
When it's a person, I think it's different because only good can come from blurring those lines. Only good can come from whatever someone's idea of masculinity or femininity is. It's like, okay, whatever. If he wants to wear a skirt, let him wear a skirt because that doesn't define who he is and how he identifies.
And so often all it does is out people.
Yeah.
Rita Ora sang the song Girls, she wrote Girls, got flack for being like, oh, you're saying that when you drink red wine, you kiss girls, and she had to come out and be like, well, I'm bi, by the way. Like, it's so annoying. Same thing with Billie Eilish. Like, she'd spoken about certain things and then a Variety interviewer asked her on the red carpet, so are you queer then or not? And she ended up putting an Instagram caption up to a photo saying, thanks for outing me on a red carpet at 11 a.m. instead of talking about anything else that matters.
Yeah.
Kit O'Connor from Heartstopper didn't publicly want to label his sexuality and then ended up having to say, I believe he's bisexual because of the craziness of we shouldn't be casting XYZ in these roles. It's horrible, the idea of that.
And I think also the you are queer baiting argument does it such a disservice to I just think of the younger generation who 100%. Can I just say are doing fantastic when it comes to their own identity and how they are just paving the way on that.
Agreed.
But I think if there is someone watching, let's say Heartstoppers or watching Harry Styles or whatever, this idea of you're queer baiting makes them then question themselves and on their journey because then it's well, am I problematic?
Can I only be out in the world comfortably if I know exactly where I sit?
Exactly.
It doesn't allow for journeys.
And it doesn't allow for fluidity because gender is a spectrum. Everything is
sexuality is a spectrum. The two aren't linked.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
you can feel one day like this and tomorrow and that's fine. That's your journey. So I think when people are saying, queer baiting, but they're putting it towards a person, I do think that opens up a world where it could be dangerous.
I agree. The only time I would say there's actually been queer baiting from people is Tattoo, the singers of All the Things She Said.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember that from other things she said, running through my... And they were dressed in schoolgirls outfits, very short skirts, and they were kissing in the rain against this It was held up always as this iconic gay anthem. They've since come out and said they are straight, they were marketed as queer women, and one half of them has said if her son was gay, she'd condemn him because she believes a real man must be a real man. God created man for procreation, it's nature, the man for me is the support. So the point is there, I would say that was the closest an individual can get to queer baiting because she's actively homophobic, but is going, oh, cool, sex sells, let me cosplay as lesbian.
Making money from people's want to see themselves on, TV or
and then turning around and going, psych, can't bear you would hate my son if he was gay.
Any equality.
That's the closest it gets to it for me as a person.
Yeah. Do you want to delve into more celebrity stories?
Stacey Dooley and Larry Dean analysed some of the most juicy, shocking and downright absurd controversies and celebrity trials both in court and by public opinion on Famously on Trial.
Listen to every episode on BBC Sounds.
It's not all doom and gloom, though. There are some nice situations where celebs have come out on their own terms, which is lovely. So
Beautiful.
Let's dive into some of them.
Let's go to the positive.
So Bella Ramsey from The Last of Us and Game of Thrones has come out as gender fluid, said she's not asked about pronouns, but just doesn't really see her gender as something fixed, which is nice. Also, Chrishell from Selling Sunset, who I adore, hosted an event at the Palladium with her a couple of months ago, so got to do a really deep dive basically into her life. And she is now with a non-binary artist called G Flip, who was also there. They're fabulous. And she said the response she's had has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
She was so worried because, you know, if you're someone who watches Selling Sunset, she was with Jason on the show and she had a very famous ex who was a man. And it's just like, okay, you're with a non-binary person now, cool. And it's so nice that that has been her response. So yeah, I think they're just like, no one owes it anything to come out.
No.
You know, if you want to come out, great.
Yeah.
I think it leads us on well to the next point as well of how does fame interact with non-straight relationships, i.e. queer relationships, just anything that isn't straight, and love stories today. Because I think the way that queer fans and non-queer fans and the media interacts with queer relationships is inherently different to the way that it is with straight relationships.
Absolutely. We're kind of playing catch up when it comes to queer relationships and fame and how they are presented when it comes to like the public eye. I think straight relationships have had so much attention on them for so long that the way that we approach queer relationships within the public eye, A, isn't necessarily going to be the same, but B, doesn't have to be the same because it...
And really, maybe it shouldn't be the same because they are so different.
They are so different.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, I feel like we can't negate the fact that homophobia is absolutely still rife, but I think it's so beautiful when we're seeing so many, you know, openly out queer, amazing couples who are kind of paving the way. But I do think there is it's a bit dangerous because we've mentioned it before, but like, why is it that
you have to be a role model who paves the way?
Exactly. You have to be this perfect example of queerness.
Yeah.
Or within that, you have to be, yes, you're queer, but you then have to also stick to society's masculine, feminine...
100%.
Do you know what I mean?
And also, I know personally of at least a couple of couples who are in the public eye, who are in, I guess, non-traditional formats of relationships, be that a throuple or an open relationship or whatever, that they have to keep quiet because they just know that the degular world is not ready yet, or the mainstream media would have a field day with the idea of what's going on within their relationship because it's just so... I always use this kind of, I think analogy is the right word with my friends, where like society obviously generally is within a box, right? And if you're a straight person, the general presumed goal is you'll find a partner who is, if you're a man, it's a woman. If you're a woman, it's a man. You'll want 2 kids and you'll live in your house and that's that.
Yeah.
If you're a gay person, you're already outside of the norm of what society says. So you're outside that box. So you're therefore closer to the likelihood of being like, oh, perhaps I could be in an open relationship or perhaps a non-monogamous or poly, whatever. Like the idea of a relationship for you is already further from the norm. So therefore you're more likely to be in relationships that aren't your typical. And I think that is true even for non-famous relationships. Like way more of my gay mates are in what you call like non-traditional relationships in terms of it not being a closed monogamous relationship. Whereas I don't think I've got any straight friends who are in anything other than a straight monogamous relationship.
And I think what's interesting about that is outside of fame, being, you know, in a queer relationship, but also open relationship or whatever, is like, okay, cool. But I think when it comes to like fame and then putting that extra added layer, it's almost as if the tabloids or whatever have kind of been like, no, we've allowed you to be gay.
But you can't possibly do another step.
You're doing too much now, okay? I've already given you gayness.
100%.
Like, be the normal type of gay where one of you is masculine,
be
one
the
of you...
good gay, exactly.
Like, stick to these...
I agree.
You know?
And I think there's also there's the media that do that, but then there's also queer fans sometimes cross the... Or not even just queer fans, but fans have such a hyperfixation with, it's this parasocial relationship, right?
Yeah.
The hyperfixation of like, oh, well, because you are this thing and you've let us in on this amount of your life, I need to know everything.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're a performer whose queerness is central to your artistry. So like, Troye Sivan, for instance, is a gay singer who really has lent into the gay male experience, which is amazing. I think his music's brilliant. But then there's this real fixation with like even what his sexual position is, if he's a top or a bottom or whatever. And it's like, the only people who need to know that is Troye and the people that Troye is potentially going to end up sleeping with, which is
his
not
business.
99.99999% of the people who are really vying to try and find out and be like, oh, well, he must be this, because the basically positions or stereotypes of positions in the gay male community are so basically rooted in misogyny. It's like, if you're a bigger, musclier, more masculine person, you will be the top because you are the man. And if you're a more feminine, in stature, slighter figure, generally you're seen as needing to be the bottom. You're the woman in the relationship, which is just so archaic. But so many people can't seem to see that in saying, oh, well, you must be this because you're skinny or you must be this because you're masculine, they're enforcing the very systems of oppression and hierarchies of oppression that they are suffering at the hands of themselves.
Yeah.
But are still upholding it.
Within
it's
your
wild.
Already oppressed community. Like, yeah. I also find it very interesting that all of our issues stem, regardless of which marginalised group you are, stem from misogyny.
Yeah, they do.
Isn't that a...
Well, that's literally
isn't
what
that
I
a
was
thing?
saying about my dissertation. That's what it was. That's what it was.
They
Isn't it? It was
all
about
stem from misogyny.
Everything is the systems of oppression that we experience in the heteronormative world.
Yeah.
Are all mapped exactly the same onto gay world.
Yeah. And I think...
like lesbians still are more downtrodden because of being women who happen to... like, it's crazy.
So obviously we're still looking at the fact that, like, you know, how fame interacts with like non-straight relationships. But I want to know, because obviously with straight relationships, some may say, quote unquote, power couple, it can benefit your career.
Yeah.
Is that the exact same thing within the queer world? Does it help?
Honestly,
Does it not help?
I think there are so few examples that I don't think there's even like
a comparison
for couples.
Right.
So I think if you look at it from an individual level, I think it's all to do with how far along you are in your career.
Okay.
So for instance, not to keep harking back at Shawn Mendes, but if he were to be queer, I think the whole worry is it wouldn't benefit him to be queer and to come out because he has this legion of female fans who presumably see them, you know, have this image of them being like, I fancy him, I love him, I want to marry him, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
If you are someone at the very start of your career who has lent on your queerness, then I would say, yeah. So Chapel Roan is having her moment at the moment. Renee Rapp, they're both queer women who, right from the off, have written about being queer and it's very central to their artistry. And therefore, particularly because lesbians love to support other lesbians, it's so nice, they have built a huge fan base of queer women who support the fact that they as artists are queer women.
Yeah.
So I think it depends where you're at in your career and also what has been central to it. Like Shawn Mendes' sexuality, regardless, has not been central to his artistry. Whereas I think if you're someone like Troye, yes, he's a pop star who is gay, but he's also made his name as a gay pop star. He's chosen to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas I guess some artists happen to be but haven't made it so central. Like Jonathan Bailey, for instance, as an actor, is known to be a gay man, but I don't think it's quite so central to his artistry that he is a gay actor, if that makes sense. It's not diminishing the fact he's an actor who's gay, but like Chapel Roan is a queer, you know, she's really made her music and her audience and her artistry about being queer.
Yeah. So
there's the difference, I think.
Is there a gay, lesbian power couple?
I honestly think the closest thing to it would be Chrishell and G-Flip.
Wow.
So Chrishell, like, I just can't think... I mean, well, Elton John and David Furnish are probably the OG that I can think of.
The OG that comes to mind.
Like, but the fact that I can't even think of many
Isn't
is
that
crazy. Like, if I think of people that I look up, like, I love Alan Carr, for instance, he's happily married, but it's not a power...
No.
They've deliberately, like, live on their farm and they're out of the public eye in that regard, which more power to them. But I can't think of...
Like, you can't just name them off, which is... And I get why, because first of all, they probably want to keep that secret and to themselves and like hold it
But
dear.
also, I think it speaks to the fact that there've been so few famous queer people that therefore you can't couple them. You know, it's like with Barry and Sabrina, we've been like, oh, an actor at the peak of his career, a singer at the peak of her career at the moment, let's put them together and make something bigger.
Yes.
Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift, boom. We don't have huge examples of huge queer people, audience-wise, who we can then lump together to become an even bigger product. No, we don't have that.
Thanks so much for watching Famously in Love. You can catch us on BBC Sounds or watch us on BBC Sounds YouTube channel.
And remember, for more in-depth celebrity stories and controversies, check out our sister podcast, Famously on Trial, with Stacey Dooley and Larry Dean.
Mwah. Bye for now.